Hey, good morning, everyone. Josh's Severe Weather. Happy Wednesday to you. We've talked a lot about the severe weather potential this week in the South, but chances are now increasing for a rare June Dixie derecho. This is a large swath of damaging wind that's expected to form in the deep south here late this afternoon and continue into tonight. A derecho is Spanish for straight ahead. It is an event of 6 hours or more of widespread wind damage over a 250-mile plus region with wind gusts of 58 miles per hour or more. And in many cases, wind gusts could exceed hurricane force over 74 miles per hour within this region of storms. It's going to be at least 60 miles wide. And there's also the threat for some tornadoes embedded within this complex of storms. Typically, this time of the year, we see derechos up across parts of the Midwest, the plains, Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, even carrying maybe into the mid-Atlantic region. But because our jet stream has been extraordinarily far south, which is why it's been relatively cool here in the Northeast and the Midwest, relatively dry as well, things are lining up in a very rare spot where we just don't see them this time of the year. So a lot of people could get caught off guard. And I'm going to kind of break things down for you guys. Here's the Dixie derecho. This is the latest Storm Prediction Center forecast outlook for today into tonight and through 7 a.m. Central tomorrow morning. We're likely looking at a widespread area of destructive winds, and that continues from the Ark-La-Miss region, northeast Louisiana, southeast Arkansas, central Mississippi, right on east and southeastward into southern Alabama and Georgia through the night tonight. There's likely going to be some wind gusts that get over hurricane force at 74 miles per hour, likely tornadoes. There could be some large hail in here and very heavy rain as well. And this area is under a moderate risk for severe weather, which we have never seen a moderate risk in June across such a big area so far south. So a very rare event here, and we've already seen kind of the makings of a destructive week. These are storm reports over the last 24 hours, a lot of hail, especially in Texas. Billiard ball size hail in Ore City overnight. You don't want to be caught behind the eight ball, that's for sure. And a lot of wind damage as well out of this first complex that came through Georgia and Florida here earlier on. So we've already had a very busy week, 228 storm reports. I think in the next 24 hours, that number is probably going to be about triple what we're seeing on the map here. Just a lot of folks are likely going to be impacted. Here is the morning outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. You can see the moderate risk here. That is a level 4 out of 5, basically just east of Monroe, right through Jackson, Meridian, Montgomery, Albany, Georgia, or Albany, Dothan, Alabama, all the way to about Hattiesburg, and an enhanced risk all the way to the Gulf Coast, south of Mobile, Baldwin County, Pensacola, Valdosta, Georgia, Savannah, Georgia, Macon, Tuscaloosa's in the enhanced risk, Greenville, Mississippi, even all the way back to the Ark-La-Tex, Shreveport, and Texarkana, and a slight risk surrounds that as well from northeast Texas over into the southern half of South Carolina and into the northeastern part of Florida as well. So a very big area that is under the gun. They are looking at a likelihood of widespread damaging winds, some to hurricane force, a few intense tornadoes, scattered large hail, some baseball size. Just a very significant outbreak of severe weather expected. This morning, we do have a severe thunderstorm watch in effect until 11 Central over parts of central and southern Mississippi. We are also likely going to see, and probably by the time you watch this video, a severe thunderstorm watch over southern Mississippi, southwest Alabama, and the Florida parishes of Louisiana, including Baton Rouge. So we're already dealing with some severe weather early this morning. Here's a look at the overall view of the southeast. By the way, we do have a marginal risk for severe weather in parts of the northeast, but nothing compared to what's going on down south here today and into tonight. Looking at the threat for hail, there is definitely a big chance for some giant hail in the Ark-La-Tex into the Ark-La-Miss. So even up to about Little Rock and as far south as, say, Natchitoches and Monroe, Louisiana, and over to Jackson, Mississippi. But that threat for hail continues overnight tonight, all the way into southern Georgia, maybe even southern South Carolina. There is a risk for tornadoes as well, especially during the prime part of our event here this evening over central and eastern Alabama, southwestern Georgia. This includes Montgomery, Alabama. We could see EF2 plus tornadoes embedded within this line of storms. But surrounding it, we do have a tornado risk anywhere from northeast Texas and southeastern Oklahoma, all the way to the eastern Gulf Coast states and into the low country of South Carolina. That even includes the southern suburbs of Atlanta. And obviously, the wind damage is going to be potentially very big out of this event from Louisiana to Georgia and northern Florida. And that goes up to Atlanta. It goes up to just south of Columbia. Even a 5% risk all the way into the southern half of Tennessee and into the Ozarks region and back into Oklahoma. And unfortunately, after this round of storms, we're not fully done. Tomorrow we have another risk for slight severe weather from southeast Mississippi through the Florida Panhandle and far southern Georgia. And then as we get into the day on Friday, we're going to see additional storm development along kind of the same spots here. So we're not only really worried about severe weather, but when you look at days of storms like this that could be particularly intense, we do have the threat for severe flooding as well in some of these spots as well. So a lot on the table here. I'm going to mainly focus on the next 24 to 36 hours or so, but certainly definitely a risk for tornadoes in any of these slight risk areas. And you can see here tomorrow a 2% chance for tornadoes along the eastern Gulf Coast states, a greater chance for severe wind across this region, and a threat for some hail, which could be pretty big as well across the central and eastern Gulf Coast states. And that extends into southwestern parts of Georgia. So even after this derecho comes through tonight, additional storm development tomorrow could lead to some potentially damaging hail. So you'll want to keep that in mind if you are planning a beach trip here to the Gulf Coast. Hail definitely is going to be a threat to you as we get through Thursday as well. Farther back across the central United States, you can see a little bit quieter weather here once we get west of Dallas and Oklahoma City through the day today. As we get to tomorrow, though, an additional complex of storms is likely to form over Kansas and Oklahoma, and there is the risk for potentially some pretty decent-sized hail out of this, especially west of Dodge City into the northwestern parts of Oklahoma, maybe the eastern panhandle as well. And there is a 2% chance, excuse me, for a few tornadoes even over eastern Colorado into the eastern panhandle of Texas here. Certainly a wind threat as well across this region, going all the way to about Wichita late in the day. On day 3, we have a marginal risk of severe weather Friday, all the way back to just south of Denver, say places like Parker, Colorado Springs, and Pueblo on eastward. And with that, we do have at least a 5% chance for severe weather, which starts to grow once we get to about Tulsa, Oklahoma. A lot to talk about here. All right, so we see on the satellite this morning a mature area of thunderstorms over Alabama and Georgia. This is not really severe, but you can see some very cold cloud tops with it. Behind it, though, we've got an additional complex moving across Mississippi here that's got some pretty intense storms with it. You can already see additional development, 2 more disturbances, one over northern Arkansas and then one back across Kansas. They are lined up and ready to hit us hard here across the southeast. Definitely going to be nasty here. This is the Storm Prediction Center SREF derecho parameter, and you can see the risk for a derecho climbs pretty significantly here later today, but especially this evening over central Mississippi and Alabama, and then sneaking into Georgia here overnight tonight. So the time frame on the worst of this wind is about mid-afternoon over Mississippi, and then early to mid-evening over Alabama, and then late evening and perhaps overnight across Georgia and Florida. But there is a chance things could certainly be a little bit faster here as well. But yeah, when you see a 90% chance, obviously that's pretty much we're dead set on seeing this kind of widespread damage here. So the GFS model shows just a boundary that's pretty much lined up right here across Dixie, and along and ahead of it, we've got multiple complexes of storms riding quickly southeast over the top of a strong ridge of high pressure. We've got a pretty big trough in the west. It's bringing snow into the mountains, some heavy rain into the high plains here. But really, with all this heat building up over Texas, up and over this ridge, we continue to see multiple complexes of storms diving east, southeastward. And that's going to continue into this weekend, including Florida, South Carolina, and right on into Sunday, more storms. So this could be a setup where we've got 7-8 straight days in a row of some form of severe weather here across Dixie, and a lot of heat as well across Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas and Oklahoma. Here's the upper level pattern on the GFS, and we can see multiple disturbances diving east and southeastward, lots of reds and yellows. This is where we have vorticity, which produces some spin in the atmosphere, or I should say the upper level jet produces that spin. But zooming in here on the southeast, you can see our first maximum moving through Mississippi this morning. That will weaken But as we get into this is around 7 o'clock this evening, a pretty well-defined max over central Mississippi. That moves quickly across Alabama here this evening and into Georgia overnight tonight, even into South Carolina. So this is going to be what's likely to sustain widespread wind damage across this region. And with that amount of spin, likely some tornadoes in here as well. So very concerning look to what's going on. In the upper levels here, we see a very active southern portion of our jet stream. This is what you would typically see kind of in the winter or early spring, but it's summertime and we just see very fast wind flow aloft here. Some of these winds are over 100 knots and just very unusual to see that kind of a pattern so far to the south. Typically we see it across places like Iowa, Nebraska, Illinois, and Wisconsin this time of the year if we are going to get severe weather, but it's way down over Texas and Oklahoma. And this continues to be right across the region. You can see another strong trough moving across North Texas, southern Kansas here on the weekend, and that continues south and east. The winds do weaken, though, as we get later into the weekend in the southeast. So I think really our best risk for damaging storms is going to be the rest of this week into the early part of the weekend. All right, so the rest of this video, till we get to tropics, I'm going to just show you models with thunderstorm chances here and potential paths. This is the HRRR model. We see storms moving south and east. We see more storms popping up this afternoon, northeast Texas, southwest Arkansas. These are going to be growing in strength and intensity through the late afternoon and evening, then moving across Dixie overnight tonight. Additional storms over Texas this evening, south and east of Dallas. And then it looks like we'll get a lull in the action here overnight tonight, early tomorrow, and then yet another complex of storms with our next upper level disturbance forms over the panhandles of Oklahoma and Texas later tomorrow, and then spreads across the Red River Valley in Oklahoma here early tomorrow night. So wave after wave of severe weather. There'll be more as we get into Friday. I'm don't have the time to really get too much into that in today's video. I'll get to that more tomorrow. Here's a look at the Texas and Oklahoma. We see a few isolated severe storms along I-30 here this afternoon, right after lunchtime, continuing through the Arklatex into the evening hours. And then we see additional storm development south and east of Dallas here this evening, 6 o'clock, and then all the way down into the heart of Texas here early this evening. Some big hail. Maybe a tornado in here, and certainly large wind profiles could bring us some strong wind out of these as they move out of the region in time for the overnight hours. And then more storm development northwest of Dallas here late in the day tomorrow, continuing tomorrow night when Dallas could get hit by potential hail producing and strong wind producing storms early tomorrow night. So very active times here coming up. Oklahoma, you're going to see severe weather as well. Not so much today and tonight, although there certainly could be a few stronger storms in the far eastern part of the state, but tomorrow is when we are likely going to see those storms forming here pretty quickly here after about 6 o'clock over southern and western Oklahoma, and those will advance eastward into the Oklahoma City area here around 9 o'clock. Probably not strong tornadoes, but there certainly could be a tornado. I'm more concerned about very large hail at this point due to the fact that we have just quite a bit of instability. In fact, I'll pull up a sounding and show that to you here. This is out of Lawton. You can see very steep lapse rates here. There is wind shear, so certainly there is a tornado threat, but the air is very quickly cooling, so we see that instability growing, and that's where we can have this threat for very large hail in this region. All right, looking at Arkansas, you have had some pretty nasty storms as well, especially the southern part of the state here early today. As we get through the afternoon hours, we'll see a few stronger storms in the northwest corner, but the more intense storms over the southern part of the state, basically south of Pine Bluff and Hot Springs. Big hail expected with these. We could see Little Rock getting hit as well right around dinner time tonight, 5, 6, 7 o'clock. And then these storms will advance eastward, and we could have another storm overnight tonight around 10, 11 o'clock somewhere in central and northern Arkansas. These will move out of the area. We'll see quieter weather tomorrow, and then more storms moving in from the west late tomorrow evening and overnight tomorrow night. All right, we're going to focus on our derecho now in the southeast. You can see first wave moves through Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana this morning. Maybe some severe weather in Georgia and South Carolina this afternoon, but here's kind of where our main focus is across the area this evening. And the HRRR model does show multiple clusters of storms, but widespread wind damage right across this region and here. Let me see if I can kind of annotate for you guys here. This zone kind of in here As it advances east southeastward, that's where we're going to see the greatest risk for severe weather and damaging winds. And I will say, with derechos, we often can see the timing on the models end up being too slow. What happens is they accelerate, they pick up that wind energy aloft, and the models just can't catch up to the speed of them. So this in particular here is 9 Central, 10 Eastern, but it's quite possible things get in here an hour or two before then, just so you guys know. But overnight, southeastern Alabama, southern Georgia, southern South Carolina, and central Mississippi will likely still be getting hit. And then Florida may get hit after midnight tonight as well into the overnight hours, maybe all the way down into central Florida as well tomorrow morning into the afternoon hours. We get just a very brief break, but you can see there's more storms tomorrow afternoon in Alabama and northwestern Florida. After this derecho comes through, there'll be more severe weather and then maybe some active weather across the Carolinas and southern Georgia here early tomorrow evening. And here comes the next cluster of storms moving into the region in the overnight hours tomorrow night. Here's a look at Louisiana, Mississippi. It's going to be rough this morning. Hattiesburg, Meridian, down to about Hammond and Slidell. These storms will move out of the area. We're going to get a few hours where we can catch our breath. More storms popping up those 6, 7 o'clock over northern Louisiana, central Mississippi, and very quickly racing through places like Hattiesburg, Meridian, all across this region. Just looks really rough. And then another wave over northeastern Louisiana, continuing into Jackson, Mississippi. So if you're in Jackson, northeast Louisiana, you need to not only be prepared for this evening, but be prepared for another wave coming in overnight tonight. This will leave the area around this time tomorrow morning. We're going to get a break, and tomorrow afternoon should be quieter across Mississippi. But we have another cluster moving into northern Louisiana overnight tomorrow night that may have briefly some severe weather, and that could move into Jackson and Brookhaven and Macomb here overnight tomorrow night. That one probably not a derecho, but still could be severe. Farther north, Tennessee, you're going to see potentially some severe weather tonight, especially south of I-40 here. Primarily, though, across Alabama is where we see most of the bad weather. Tomorrow, we will see a few pop-up cells, but nothing expected to be severe. You're north of the jet stream dynamics tomorrow. Kentucky, probably not going to see much, and unfortunately, the Ohio Valley doesn't look to see much either. Here's a look at eastern Mississippi and Alabama. And you can see we're going to have some severe weather this morning, heavy storms as well, maybe localized flash flooding. Additional storms firing this afternoon north of Birmingham. So a rough afternoon expected here in northern Alabama. As we get into this evening, though, northern and central Mississippi, a likely tornado threat, a likely strong wind and large hail threat. And we may see our strongest of the winds across this portion of Alabama, Tuscaloosa. The threat for hurricane force winds here this evening, Birmingham, Montgomery, the threat for hurricane force winds, very large hail as well. This will be primarily 7 to 11, and then things move south and east. We'll continue to see storms overnight and probably a flash flood threat in here as well on the I-20 corridor from Jackson up to Birmingham and on I-85 from Montgomery up to about LaGrange, Noonan, and Peachtree City, Georgia. We'll get a break here tomorrow morning after everything lifts off to the south and east. We could see a few pop-ups in the afternoon, but really nothing severe at that point, and we'll have to keep an eye on Friday once again across this region. All right, farther east, Georgia's going to get hit hard as well. One wave moving through the area late this morning into the early afternoon. Additional pop-up storms around Atlanta could be severe late today. 5 o'clock rush in Atlanta looks like it could be nasty. We may see some hail, strong winds, possibly even a tornado warning here. Augusta over to South Carolina. Best chance for severe weather is going to be between 5 and 8 o'clock. We see that moving down towards the low country here this evening. Next wave moves into Atlanta around 9, 10 o'clock with very intense winds towards Macon and Columbus, Georgia here later this evening, continuing into southeastern Georgia overnight tonight. The derecho should weaken by the time it leaves the area here around 3 or 4 in the morning. We'll see leftover rain into early tomorrow, then a break, and then additional shower and storm activity across southern Georgia as well as across the Metrolina area and upstate South Carolina as well. Florida is also going to see some rough weather here. We're going to see storms across the western panhandle this afternoon that could be severe. We get a lull in the activity. We could see pop-ups, of course, across the southern peninsula. And then we see our derecho moving in from the north and west around 3 or 4 in the morning. Tallahassee, Jacksonville could get hit pretty hard here overnight tonight. Even Gainesville around 7 in the morning tomorrow. We see additional storms right behind this. So a lot of rain expected over northern Florida, maybe severe weather over central Florida from late tomorrow morning on into the afternoon hours. And then South Florida tomorrow afternoon could see locally severe weather. We'll get a bit of a break, but more storms expected tomorrow night over northeastern Florida. And then this area could get hit again on Friday. So that's a severe weather look. Temperatures are going to be heating up as well across the south. You can see the heat in the southwest and across Texas, building into the Dakotas here, finally feeling like summer. The southeast will have hot temperatures in Florida, but cooler across the Carolinas and northward due to the fact that we'll have more cloud cover. But even Raleigh could get up close to 90. Wilmington could get close to 90 on Friday. And then this weekend is just going to be stinking hot across Texas and Louisiana with triple-digit heat in the wake of this severe weather outbreak that we're dealing with over the next multiple days. A lot of rain expected as well, especially in the south and east. And let me zoom in for you guys so that you can see that. We are going to see the potential to see 4 or 5 inches of rain from this first complex of storms that moves through tonight, but additional storms overnight tomorrow night. And there will be a flood threat from Arkansas to Georgia and southern South Carolina, maybe northern Florida as well. Just a lot of rain in the forecast here. All right, real quick, we'll look at the tropics. Believe it or not, as strong as El Nino has come on, it's actually kind of settled in the last few days. I don't know if that's going to be permanent or not, but it has come down somewhat. So we're not into a strong La Nina, just kind of or El Nino, just kind of a moderate one. But very warm waters over the Pacific. You can see that warming. The Atlantic is running very hot. In fact, we're seeing over the main development region in here record warm temperatures for the month of June. We're only even halfway through the month. And that could mean an early start to tropical wave development here off of Africa over the next few weeks. I'm not trying to scare everybody at this point with very warm water. Certainly that's going to counterbalance El Nino. We're going to have a lot of wind shear as well, but we may see a pretty active late June and July starting across this region. So keep that in mind. Even over the last week, the Gulf has warmed up pretty significantly, and the main development region has also warmed up significantly. And that's also adding fuel to our derecho, by the way. No activity expected over the next 7 days, but we'll keep an eye on things. We do have waves coming off of Africa, but a lot of dry air and wind shear over the central Atlantic is going to keep anything from really developing over the next week. The Gulf, you see that high pressure region here. Things are pretty quiet. The wind shears relax those, so we'll have to keep an eye on this gyre here over Central America over the next week. The GFS model loves to spin things up out of it. It showed hurricanes in the Gulf all last week. For this upcoming week. They backed off on that. Then the GFS is starting to try to bring something back up here this time next week in the Northwest Caribbean and then move it up the East Coast as a weak system. Not going to be a big system if that's the case, but not a lot of consistency in the model. The run before did not show that system developing much. It showed kind of a disturbance, and then that was it. The European is not showing it, so I'm not jumping on it at this point with it being 10 days away, but the European does show we start to see some slow development from our waves coming across Africa, maybe impacting the Lesser Antilles in about 7 or 8 days from now. So I'll be watching for you guys, but I'm not super concerned at this point. Really, the only system of concern is moving towards Pakistan and India. That is Cyclone Biparjoy. It's getting wind shear all over from the top of the system, so it hasn't become a major storm, but it's slow moving, and we're going to see a lot of rain as this system moves in later tomorrow to the India-Pakistan border. A lot of flooding possible here over northwestern India, so I'm keeping them in my prayers for sure. Thank you so much for your time today. If you enjoyed this video, I know it was a little bit longer than what I typically do, please subscribe. I'm going to have more videos coming up. We're going to talk more severe weather, more tropics, and more record heat across the southern United States in the coming days. I want to give all the glory to God, who allows me to do this every day as a Christian man. I feel like this is my calling, to be able to be a meteorologist and to share extreme weather with you. I know we're going through a lot of storms in our life. I want to read a quick passage that kind of addresses that, Psalm 107. And that is from 6. They cried unto the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them out of their distresses. And he led them forth by the right way, and that they may go to a city of habitation. Oh, that men would praise the Lord for his goodness and for his wonderful works to the children of men. For he satisfieth the longing soul and filleth the hungry soul with goodness. Such as sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, being bound in affliction and iron, because they rebelled against the words of God and contemned the counsel of the Most High. Therefore he brought down their heart with labor. They fell down, and there was none to help. Then they cried unto the Lord in their trouble, and he saved them out of their distresses. He brought them out of darkness and the shadow of death, and brake their hands in sunder. Oh, that men would praise the Lord for his goodness and for his wonderful works to the children of men. The Lord is good, folks. I know you're going through storms. We all are. I've got my stepfather has stage 4 liver cancer. He's going through a major storm. He needs your prayers. I have friends. We have one who had a stroke last week. We have all kinds of things going on. But despite all of these storms in our life, despite the severe weather, despite the divide that's going on in the world, the Lord is good. He has given us Jesus Christ as our Savior to raise us from the dead. When that time comes to live eternally with him in the righteous kingdom of God. I want to just share that good news because it means so much to me that no matter what kind of tough times I may be struggling with, that the Lord can lift me out of them. All I got to do is believe. And I just wanted to share that word with you because it's important to me. God bless you all. If you have any prayer requests, I am very happy to pray for you. I hope you are staying safe tonight in the South, and look forward to sharing with you again soon. Have a blessed day.